Deli here is a game developer, ex-game developer for Ubisoft.
Brain, so yeah,
I was about to say, I can tell by the way that your jaw is dropped.
Numbers out. I have no clue what the hell we're talking about anymore. I think we're talking about Predecessor, but I'm back in math class. I'm lost.
No, you're good.
Sorry,
So let me put it to you this way too. One of the reasons why I was asking that hypothetical question is because I've seen mobile MOBAs that achieve their time frame by simply, for example, after the 15-minute mark, now everybody gets like an attack speed boost, like a flat 1 attack speed boost to help the game go on. And as soon as that boost comes in, within 5 minutes, the match is over. You still got to play it out, but within a minute, that match is over. Like within a couple minutes. The reason why I bring it up is because, as they've mentioned before, they were focusing on 25-minute games. Currently, I'll be real with you, they're kind of there, but it's hard to get there without it feeling like a brawler, if you get what I'm saying. If you keep it as far as traditional MOBA, farming, work your way up, etc., it's very easy for it to become a brawler. And I'll be real with you, like, it didn't matter what role I was playing, there was almost always a fight going on, which is understandable. That can happen in a MOBA, why not? But I'm really not against this idea of some sort of buff or some sort of enhancement happening after a certain while to help the game go on. And it's not like you just have a prime buff, for example, right? It's not like you're completely OP. But if we increase the attack speed, or if we increase movement speed, or if they increase some sort of metric, would that work? Would it work from a gamer perspective and from a dev perspective?
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and let the gamers say first.
I just it's hard to say, just because the games that we played today aren't really they're not really indicative of what it's going to be like when you have 10 people in ranked, all that know 100%. The roles. And you know, because it was like, I think I had a game that ended at like 35 minutes today, and I only got like 3.5 items out of 6. So
yeah,
we'll see. I think once they implement a ranked, you get to see what it's like at the highest
optimized gameplay.
Yeah, and then they'll have a really good, at least they'll have a lot of information as to how to tweak it, because a lot of games ended at like that last one. What was it, 27 minutes, something like that, and we didn't even finish our third item, Windu. So
yeah,
there definitely is going to be a lot of tweaks, I think.
No, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were
done. I finished.
Oh, you're so another thing we have here going here that kind of adds into this games and how they kind of feel brawler with the games that we play today is like, we got heroes we haven't touched in forever. You know, you got Drongo, you got Howie. You know, people are gonna pick those characters, and now they want to get out there. They want to use those. Like, let me go use this ability. Let me go see what this is like. You know. So
I was spamming shit left and right. Yeah.
Exactly. So they're gonna start start those engagements faster than what you normally would if you've been playing this game for 6 months. You know, like you're gonna start playing the game for what the game is. Right now, we're like, oh, we haven't touched him. Let's go see what it's like. You know, like, oh, I got Howie's ultimate. Let's go. Let's see what this is. You know, and you start flowing up, and you have those issues as well. So it's hard to tell with what we played today.
So to piggyback off of what J-Pie said and what you said, I honestly think, because you got to remember, like, can the 1% maximize it? Can the 1% get to those 25 match timers? Of course. The 1% can have a match done in 10 to 15 minutes if they play it properly.
Right.
But the 99% that isn't going to know to go after an objective after a team wipe, the 99% that isn't going to know, hey, you know what, maybe we should group and push mid, that's going to be the majority of the game. So I think our matches today, as far as sporadicness, people building what they want, off meta picks, whatever it might have been, I think our matches today were even more of a representation of what we might run into. To be honest.
Well, you're definitely going to have a greater volume once it's out and open to the public. Like matches that we had today are going to be a lot more common than the top 1% of ranked players and whatnot. And I guess that's maybe Deli can respond on that, because you got to balance so it's not utterly broken at the highest level, but you also have to balance it in a way that works well for pretty much each tier. Like if we reference how Paragon used to be, they would always talk about how, well, in bronze this character is broken or really overrepresented in the win rates, and then as you get higher, it's like they're one of the weaker characters. It's like it's a difficult balancing act.
I mean, from my year of playing Paragon professionally and meeting everybody at PEX 2017, the information that I was able to gather was that all the characters who had auto lock abilities, all the characters who had high win rates in the lower ranks were basically had kits that were freebies. A lot of the kits that characters like Drongo or whatever just had damage buffs, just basically get out of jail free cards, or kits that allowed players to play recklessly as possible and still defend themselves at any angle, any moment in time. Partially due to the fact that the map design was just not my favorite, but we can get into that later here when I get a chance to dissect the predecessor map design. But balancing from the top down is clearly the best way if you want an actual competitive environment. If you want something that retains high audience numbers, like have a high customer satisfaction, a high customer retention rate, you can do something along the lines of Mortal Kombat 11, where NetherRealm Studios opts to play for win rates, audience scores, fan favorites, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, they appeal to their bottom line, because while there's only let's say 1,000 professionals playing the game every single day, 365 days a year, there are 10 million. I think it just sold over 12 million copies. So let's just say 10 million players. That is an astronomical number, probably over 100 times the amount of pro players. So why would you give the pro players the ability to help balance when they're not your bottom dollar? You can go for that as well too, especially if you're going to make something like a brawler, because at the end of the day, having a competitive scene will evolve regardless. Because of the passion of the community,
the nature of the game.
Yeah, and the nature of just a MOBA in general. But if there are two approaches. If you appeal to the bottom dollar, you're going to have a sour competitive scene, which is something that Paragon had. And
what do you mean by What do you mean by sour competitive scene?
A sour competitive scene is something along the lines of like people just asking for more constantly, balancing to the top down. I know us at Bronze Army, we were able to play with the top 100 people, and a lot of the times we're like, hey, this person's going to play this character because it's in meta. This person's going to play this character is in meta. And all we would have to do is just roll our eyes, because we had no say in the ability to balance from the top down. These characters are balanced from, easiest to best, or to boost win rates, or to make bronze or silver players more, adept to putting their feet into the pool, and then obviously jumping in at the 12 foot end. Whereas us as professionals playing the game 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day, we are clearly just not able to, we're able to not see the eye to eye with the, balancing or the design team with the aspects of these characters with these overloaded kits, or characters like Muriel, which has like the ability to do all, slow, shield, stun, and travel across the map, shield, stun, and slow at the same exact time, knock up, whatever it may be. A lot of these kits are overloaded, but they're not for us, they're for the bottom dollar. So like I said, which creates a sour competitive scene, because all the competitive matches ended up being the exact same, all the bans are the exact same, all the teams are the exact same. That, for example, Jay Lee will always play characters like,
like Rampage.
Characters like Rampage or Sevarog, yeah. So it leads into, it funnels the competitive scene into a meta, which, there's a meta everywhere, but you're able to see, if you look at competitors, League of Legends and Dota, there are many champions, many world champions at that are able to beat their opponents best of the best, 1% of the 1%, using off meta picks, using picks that are just traditionally low tier picks or cheese strats or whatever it may be. I'm sure there's a top 10 list of off meta wins in world champion tournaments, and that's just something that will evolve with balancing from the top down. But like I said, if you appeal to your bottom dollar, you're going to get a sour competitive scene.
Now,
so is that something with heroes or with characters or people you use, how you call them, that have your low skill characters, it takes somebody, a noob like me can come in and just play this character and do decent in the game, but I'm not gonna get the benefit if I play that high skill character. That is there something like that could be introduced that'd be more, or because we're talking about people they're getting these kits that are just making them cheesy in a sense. I mean, but if we get so then would almost like a diminished return, all right, yeah, you picked the cheesy one, it's easy to her, she's got lock on abilities, but if we don't pick the lock on ability character, then we're going to get a better output. Is that something that can be implemented, or is that not how that works?
Unfortunately, that's not how that works, because there are actually two other factors that come into play. That's skill floor and skill ceiling. So the skill floor is obviously something you're familiar with, something along the lines of a character is very easy to play. If we look at a competitor like League of Legends, Ash.
He just called me trash, a low-key, something I'm familiar with. Just saying.
But like a Grayson,
I didn't say it,
for example.
Anyways, like a low skill floor character, something like Garen or Ash. But fortunately, you see characters like Ash in the top leagues, even though she's a low skill floor character. It's because her skill ceiling is vast. You're able to use her kit is able to be used in a plethora of ways that allow her to benefit her team and or defend herself. Even though her detractor is the fact that she cannot defend herself, she has no pushback, stun, slow, whatever it may be. She only outputs damage as an ADC, and she has a very, very slow early game start. Her farming is usually behind everybody else's, and like I said, that is a low skill floor character with a high skill ceiling. But you can have characters like Morgash with a low skill floor and a low skill ceiling and still see her in competitive play, because because the 1% is able to play at that skill ceiling. But unfortunately, if you cater to the bottom dollar, the skill ceiling will be flat, which is something that a lot of games suffer from. Mortal Kombat, for example, is a game where if you look at the pros, you'll see a lot of them, just constantly play the same characters. Sonic Fox will constantly play the same characters. But if you look at a game like Tekken, which is also a competitor to Mortal Kombat, you'll see why it's the most popular, because the skill ceiling may be low, but the skill floor may be low, but the skill ceiling may be much, much higher on a character that is, in the same tier as a character that would be adjacent in Mortal Kombat.
Now, let me pause it real quick, because I want you to keep going. But in that little intersection real quick, JPie and Cooch, based off of what you experience with these character kits, for example, I don't know if you got to play Drongo, Kalari, etc., or any character that you played, do you guys think that Predecessor is considering the floor and the ceiling of the skill in these kits?
Kuchu, you want to go first, or would you like me to?
I don't feel like I have the experience to answer the question, to be honest with you.
Well, if you don't have the experience, then how easy was it to pick up a character and start playing it and do well? You're a perfect person to ask.
Howitzer, the R2000, the rocket that he's got, I did not say it was necessarily a lock-on, but I thought it was going to give me like a reticle or something that I knew I was aiming at, but it was literally just, it stayed the same and you just shot it. And it's like, okay, well now I gotta, so it took me a minute to figure that out. I mean, there were certain things I had to understand what I was doing with the character. You're not seeing with Drongo, the boomerang he's got.
You don't see range indicators or anything like
You don't
that?
see a range indicator. Like, you're literally just throwing. So it's like, okay, I'm like, wait, what did I do? And I think there is a slight range indicator. Who did I use? When I used howitzer. When you do the R2000, it does show you the range, like how far you can go, but it doesn't give you a reticle of what you're aiming at. Like, this is like, so nothing changes there. But your range indicator does change, so it does extend. So there's that benefit there. But like, I'm thinking like not necessarily a lock on. I wasn't worried about being lock on, but I was like, okay, I shot and like I missed the person because they moved. I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was shooting there. So a little bit. There's some things that you need to learn and understand. Yes, I guess I would say.
So as a new player, let's say howitzer, was he easy to pick up, use his abilities, understand how to play?
I don't think I'm new enough to say yes to that. Like I think it was easy. I mean, it was decent. It wasn't bad, but I mean, because of the fact that I'm playing Fault and stuff like that, I do have the understanding of what I'm doing with all these different abilities, but like understanding what his abilities do in Perfect. No, I guess, I mean, his right mouse button, I didn't know what I'm supposed to be doing with that. So I guess no, I'll answer that that way.
Got it.
Now, I want to bring up something because it occurred to me, if you noticed, there's no, I only encountered lock-ons for some items. Have you guys encountered those kinds of abilities? Like, I didn't get to play Chimera, so I don't know if he has like a leap where he just, you lock on the character and leap, but did you encounter a lot of those abilities? The characters I used?
The characters I used, no.
I didn't see one. Even Kalari has the original ult where she just dashes forward and hits people. So I'll be honest, I think the only lock-on ones would be Muriel ult and maybe Chimera Leap from what we saw today.
Yeah, I didn't get to see a Chimera in game. I played Muriel though, and you for sure picked a hero. And I do think to what you mentioned earlier, Windu, the game, you can pick it up and you can like play very poorly, and you'll still feel like you're doing a lot of stuff. But I do think that there is quite a high skill ceiling because of the blink. It sets up for some really interesting interactions that I wasn't used to the gameplay to really capitalize on it. But one time when I was Howie, Steel ulted on me, and that's you just basically baited out a free ult, and then you could punish. I see that there's going to be some players that maybe they'll be like a one-trick gadget or Howie that just make crazy plays, and then there will be me who can't do anything with gadget.
So off of those responses, Deli, because again, this is player base. This is experienced player base, experienced but still kind of new, still learning. You get what I'm saying? As a developer, and you hear that, how would you feel if this was your baby?
You would have to balance kits. Like, I would go from easy, intermediate, and hard characters, right? You can even break it down to hard and expert characters as well to have 4. But an easy character would be a character that somebody could pick up, whether it be they have 100 hours in a MOBA, 1,000 hours in a MOBA, or 10 hours in a MOBA, or 0 hours in a MOBA, between 1 and 5 games, or 1 and 3 games. Where an intermediate character between 5 to 7, 5 to 9, and hard character between anywhere between 10 to 17, 10 to 20, and an expert character anywhere between 20 to 30 games. Obviously lasting somewhere along the lines of 25 to 45 minutes if you're looking at lower skill ranks to the average bell curve. So yeah, if you had a character whose kit was easy to understand and characters were able to pick it up within 1 to 5 games or 1 to 3 games, you would have a very high fun to not fun ratio, or high reward for the player, because at the end of the day, anybody who plays a MOBA wants to be rewarded, right? Whether it be playing a support character because they want to feel valuable in a team but don't have the ability to aim, or mechanical skill to be able to jungle or whatever, or just like the fact that they just like assisting or duo queuing with somebody else, right? There are a plethora of reasons why a character would play, or a person would play a support role, or there's a plethora of reasons why you would play a jungle role. The reason I prefer and I opt to play jungle was for plenty of reasons. I was able to micromanage my time a little bit more. I didn't have lanes, lane minions. I liked having a massive impact on the game, and also I like to be able to have like alone time to be able to
gather your thoughts and stuff,
right? So if I'm streaming and I'm teaching Paragon, I would like to play the jungle role because that's the most optimal role for me to be able to speak to somebody, right, without somebody ganking me or whatever. But if I played ADC, I had to focus on farming, I had to focus on chat, I had to focus on, if I'm buying the correct items, if I had, whatever it may be. But in jungle, it's like I can adjust my path on the fly. I have a starting routine. Pretty much I can just autopilot my starting routine and talk to people at the same time, or communicate with my team members, check the scoreboard. I was able to do a plenty of things, multitasking. Whereas on ADC, I can't check the scoreboard. I can't keep tabs on my other team. I can't, shot call from the ADC role, which is something that's very important for me too. If I was able to keep tabs on everybody, shot calling from the support role, I've tried plenty of times, and it just not my favorite. It is doable, but it's not my favorite, just because, like I said, you're in lane. But anyways, I digress. If you have characters that have kits that are easy to play, and you have the ability to rank them between 1 to 5 games or 1 to 30 games on average playtime of a MOBA, something, if you look at a competitor of League of Legends or Dota, an average player, average new player rakes in something where between 10 to 12 hours, in a game within the first week of a MOBA. So if you were to look at like that on a 5-day week, 5-day business week, you would look at something along the lines of about 2 hours a day, which is roughly, if you're looking for 30 to 40 minute games, that's about 2.5 games a day, right? So that's basically, are you able to pick up a new character within 1 day, or you're able to pick up an intermediate character within the week? And that's something that is able to be determined on a game design basis as well too, for a character, for characters that would be suitable for play styles, for a JPI, for you, Windu, and then of course, it's Cooch,
individually,
right?
Yep. Cooch and Cooch as well too. So that's something that you also have to factor in, is how much playtime a person would normally have too. So you can have characters like Morgesh who are easy, but characters like Countess who are also easy, but in its own separate tier set as well too. So it could be like easy plus, which is like super easy, 1 to 3 games, and then easy, just regular easy, or easy minus, or whatever it may be, and that would be anywhere between 1 to 5 games or whatever.
So I want to kind of shift over here really quick as well, because along with a game being easy enough to figure out comes the map.
Yes.
Now, I do find incredibly interesting, to put you in perspective, kind of paint a picture. This map reminds me of Monolith, with more verticality, but it's got an outside buff camps like the original Smite maps did back in the day.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you arguably, and this is the way that I described it to the team also, you have a lot of, play around potential, a lot of ring around the rosy potential on the outer lanes. So essentially, imagine if in Legacy they decided to add a buff on the outer corner instead of the Harvester, to kind of paint a picture there. So it was interesting to see, but I definitely can see a mobility meta being played around situations like that. I'm going to go ahead and put a Kalari film here in the middle of the screen as we talk. But I don't know, man. Like, as far as map design goes, I personally am against having buffs on the outer lane. I want to hear how you guys feel.
You guys can go ahead.
It seems like I kind of like it. It kind of incentivizes those lanes, the solo and duo lane, to keep an eye on that buff and not roam towards the center of the map. and yeah, I don't know. I liked it. It was when I was in the solo lane, I was considering how I'm managing the minions. And at the time that the buff was about to be up, or at, like a minute before, I just started shoving the lane. So it would, by the time it was up, my lane was pushed underneath his tower, and I just quickly grabbed it while he was clearing them. And I think that I don't know if what he was thinking about. I would have liked to know like what he thought. Just because I don't know, I think it could be good. It could be good. I enjoyed it. As for the verticality of the map, I didn't make much use of it at all. Like maybe one blink up a ramp, but I didn't get to really scout out all the vertical areas. So
that's one thing real quick I'll go off that is I kind of was hoping that with this little playtest we would have like a little, like that first intro map, like the first time you go in, like, hey,
just go in and walk around.
Yeah, let's just go look at the map and see what's new. Let's look at it because it's a new map. Let's go see what we got going on. But it was instantly like we go in and we're gaming, you know, which is cool too. I enjoyed the games. I definitely really enjoyed the games. I really appreciate the invite and everything. But like, I just wish there was something more we could go around and see what, you know. That's the thing they were teasing the whole time. But we got a new map. And the way we get to now go back and look at it is we have to go back and look at gameplay and then pause it. Like, oh, what'd you see there, you know? But onto the buff situation. I like the buff as a duo lane guy and a solo lane guy. That's where I'm at, right? I like it because it kind of gives me a little more
something to do.
Freedom. I don't have to worry about the gank so much. Like let's, for example, Fault, where Fault has their river buffs in. You have to go through. If you don't have a ward there, you're now going through a fog wall that you could be running right into the face of a jungler, right? And you don't know what's going on, right? You kind of have, like, you don't have to worry about that unless he somehow was able to sneak behind you. You almost have vision on all the answers to that buff that you can just go over there and take care of that, you know? So, and it's also another, you could, as a dual lane, it kind of gives you a hiding spot. If the enemy duo lane backed, you go get the gold buff, then you can kind of hang out there for a minute. And when they come back, now you kind of gank them. You get to reverse gank them. I like the options you have with the play. And it does add a little more verticality to the game as well. So I like it as of right now.
I will say I personally think the biggest problem with outer buffs is that they're too safe. One of the big reasons why buffs in the jungle or in the river work so well is because you have to leave the safety of your lane into the territory of the jungler. There's a risk-reward scenario behind it. You overextend, you try and steal a red buff, you're in their jungle, you get caught, oops, the rest of your team wasn't near you, risk reward. With situations like this in the minimap, like, actually, this is a perfect scenario right here. If you guys can just kind of look at the screen. I'm extended as a Kalari. Now, the way they designed Kalari is new invisibility, by the way. If you are within a certain, let's say like 1,000 units.
I think it's 500 units.
500, okay. If you're within 500 units, while she's invisible, she'll immediately be detected. Yep. It's not like she just goes invisible and walks away. So you're going to be able to tell in this little video clip right here that I have the eyeball above me. They can see me. But picking a character with mobility, like a Gideon, a Kalari, for example, it's just too much of a meta choice in the solo lane. If you get what I'm saying. So watch.
Gotcha.
So watch here. This is a gank.
She's no longer stealth. They call it camouflage.
Camouflage. Excuse me. Yeah, because it's not true stuff. So right here. Typical quick little gank right there. Use of mobility, etc. But they're not even close. They have blinks, but being mindful. That blink is once every 5 minutes.
Yep.
Possible potential. Once every 5 minutes is make or break situations. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that isn't something that can be upgraded. That isn't something that can be changed. It just happens. Now, they actually go for a second gank because I, like somebody that doesn't learn, decide to walk back up as soon as he went into the jungle. And here comes their jungler steal again. So literally, I'm just like, oh, Time to play Ring Around the Rosies again. This time they know what I'm gonna do. Steel's waiting up there for me. I'm like, oh no, look at this. Go invisible, they can see me. The eyeball. It's just there's too much potential with the individuals that control verticality. If I would have had to gone into the jungle, if I didn't have that, if it was just the lane and then the jungle, if I have to enter the jungler's territory while trying to evade and everything, that puts me in danger. Imagine a Rampage the way that he worked back in the day. Rampage got buffs in the jungle. If I'm in the jungle now with him, I'm at a huge disadvantage. You feel me? I just think that it provides too much safety for the individual side laners. And I don't think that an easy buff or safe escape routes, etc., should be something that is easily available.
You know, Windu, I have to say, man, they made mistakes on that gank. I know, you know, Wire Angel, he's a tester, and I was against him in solo lane as Howie, and he punished me. Like there were times where he did not miss a single ability, and he did everything well. And I you know, in that gank, for example, if the steal, that first one, if the steal just followed you down and was wailing on you, and the Drongo stayed up there, and you like they could have, if they were organized enough, they could have tried to get more off of that. But
again, 99%. Can the 1%? Could the 1% have killed me? Absolutely. I fucked up so many times. I walked back out after I just got ganked. I know he's still behind the fog wall. Walked back out anyway. Can the 1% take advantage? Yes. Will the 99% be able to?
Well,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think if it's more difficult, it gives something to strive towards. You know, I think that's part of the fun of mastering a game, and yeah, and with the, I don't know how much of a longer distance it is, because like you know how we mentioned with Fault that you have the buff closer towards the middle lane, and then that you pose that risk going down there, right? Like as the jungler, you always want to help the dual lane secure the buff. And I'm just curious to see how that kind of relationship is going to play out once this game is out, people are playing, and you know, because you know in theory, yeah, now the buff is further away. But it's kind of further away from any kind of help that you could receive from your mid laner rotating. And if you go all the way to at least the gold or green buff, it's a little bit further away, like distance wise. So for example, say if the gold buff is up, say that becomes like a big, say like this gold buff is equivalent to kind of false gold buff, where you really, really want to secure it for that early game advantage. That's the perfect time for a gank from junglers, and if they can read that, then you know it could create a similar kind of interaction in Fault, where you know you have that objective early game before a Raptor or Baby or Prime.
So let me try and paint this picture. You remember how in Monolith?
Yeah, Windu, you're muted.
Sorry, hold on. There we go. So let me try and paint this picture. You remember how back in the Monolith days, if a jungler, or let's say you're on the longer side of the lane, you know how they were offset, right? On the outside. Yeah. Let's say you're on the longer side. You got that gold buff there next to you or whatever. Now, the jungler would have to go through the middle of the river, through the jungle, up by your tower, and then come down the lane behind you, to where the options were you either go through the jungler, fight, or you go into the jungle, which is even more danger territory. You follow? At least placement-wise, clutch. Here, now imagine if the jungler does all that, goes by the gold buff, comes out by the tower, is walking down the lane, and now you just went into another outer lane, and now you got 2 paths to get back home, making it that much harder for a jungler to gank. It's essentially the way that it was working, because if you look at this zoomed in image right here, they literally had to go through the middle of the river, past one of your camps, come out by your tower, and on dual lane, it was even further up in the tower. And then, if you were in that camp, then they would have to go all the way around. And it's just, like, I'll be real with you, the amount of time that took, even just as I was a mid laner rotating, bro, as a mid laner rotating, I was like, holy shit, I'm actually late to my own gank that I planned, because these motherfuckers like, oh, somebody dropped over there, somebody went over here. They literally scattered like roaches, and there was one behind there, there was one there isn't just that, hey, you either go into the lane, go into the jungle, go into the tower. You know what I'm saying? So I understand how the different options might expand on the playability of it, right? But when you're aiming for 25-minute matches, you want that team fight to be resolved quickly. You want that team fight for somebody to act on it. You want that if somebody's getting a buff, it's a risk reward. You want them to be in more danger, not safer. You get what I'm saying there as far as my mindset goes?
Yeah, I agree. I guess I'll elaborate on that. On a technical game design aspect, I don't like buffs on the outer edge. The reason why is because I want more breathing room for gameplay and freedom, like in terms of like freedom of strategical and tactical decision. But creating buffs on the outside, you're giving somebody a safe space, or let's say, in your example where you're rotating to gank, if you guys are isolating buffs on that side, like let's say Drake and Baron are on that side, right? Mm-hmm. If you guys have buffs all the way on the outer edges, that makes the rest of the map not playable, if that makes any sense, if you guys are following, right? The biggest thing about why the competitors are so, like, they use that box format, they use the same thing, because they're able to, one, have timings in the map that give it dynamic pacing, mm-hmm. But two,
rotation times, etc.
Every part of the map is playable. If you guys watch League of Legends, when the Drake is being captured, the rest of the map is still currently in play. Mid lane is right there. A jungler could grab his red buff, hop over the wall real quick. There's obviously a sense of urgency to play, but at the same time, you still have the rest of the map in play. But when you have a buff on such an outer edge, an outer rim like that, much like how Windu said, when you are traveling all the way over there and committing full time, the rest of the map is not in play. It is literally impossible to get back into your mid lane in order to do anything else. That is a lot of the issue with Paragon, where you had one longer lane or whatever it may be. When you execute a gank and somebody's on the other side of the map, it basically is like, how many times are you just say, I just forfeit that tower? How many times have you guys played a game plus, past platinum, where you're like, we can't get there in time? That renders the rest of the map unplayable, and that's just bad map design. You don't give players the freedom or the tactical choice to actually dive into that, right? Or to consider that path, because at that point there is no exit. You can't exit that play. You're like, we're losing that tower, right? If the map is small enough, or if the buffs, specifically the buffs, are clustered enough into the middle of the map,
there's proximity.
It's the map then becomes complex enough to be interesting, but also transparent enough to be predictable, which is a lot of the reasons why it's like, oh, you get this tower, they go to Drake or they go to Baron. Teams can guess where the other team is going, because there's a level of predictability, but it's complex enough or you can be proven wrong, where you go to Drake and then they're at Baron, because the whole map is in play. Does that make sense? But you can't guide these players' hands like that. That's not how this works. If you reward freedom and strategic and tactical decisions, and you also reward map knowledge by giving exploration, you can't guide the player from point A to point B, or you can't create parts of the environment that section off the rest of the map where you have to full commit. Like I said, if we're just looking at competitors, you can exit from Baron. you can exit from Drake. But a lot of the times when I was playing Paragon and jungling, alongside my cohorts, like Sneaky, we'd have to commit to Orb Prime. Like, well, we just have to do it. Like, there's no exit. And when you have no exit, when you have no freedom of choice, tactical decision, and strategic play, it's just bad. It's just bad for gameplay.
Like, I'll be real, the fact that middle is probably the dangerous spot in Predecessor right now. Because in order to get those river buffs, you have to either blindly throw like a Gideon rock through the wall, hope you get it right, which really, to be honest, you shouldn't be able to do. But you have to literally go down and commit to grabbing it. Or if you're the jungler, you have to turn that corner, commit to grabbing it. There's a risk and a reward aspect. Like, the fact that these buffs are so outward, it's almost like you're creating an island for duo and for solo. When solo's already enough of an island. You get what I'm saying? And it's really one of those things that I much rather would have preferred for them to have some sort of intricacy towards the river entrance, or just somewhere along those lines, quite frankly. Just because I can see the problems with just having, because after T1s were down, those side buffs were absolute dead space. Nobody went to get them. If you weren't going to grab a quick buff, it was red or blue from either jungle, and you kept pushing. Nobody was on those outer lanes, unless for some random reason somebody is getting chased, and that's where they ran, and that's where the team fight ended up.
I do want to ask you guys a question. When you guys were playing the game, did you guys opt to push down mid often, or were you guys pushing through the jungle or pushing through side lanes more often than not? On a scale of mid. 1 to 10, mid?
I would say every fight, everybody grouped mid and push.
Okay.
Almost every
fight. The only
fight.
time that we were like when we get past the laning phase and we're actually we're getting taking objectives and some of that, it's almost objective to go mid. That from there, like if you were in the other lane, is because you were just either pushing resetting the lane, with the minions, and then going back and helping mid is kind of how the game ended up with that for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I do want to say though, before we get too far, with what you just explained and how you explained the dead space of the map and how that, with what you and Windu both said, it really does change my opinion. Like I do see it as a safe space. I do, me as a guy that's like a newer player, will say I won't call myself a complete noob because I do have plenty of hours in the game, but it is easier than that. But then explaining how that does kind of cancel that off, and I have very minimal hours in League of Legends, and I understand what you're talking about, how you're able to get from one place to another place from there just by taking it, and that is. You're able to get back to your lane, and that's it. If anything, you can't get anywhere else from there. So I can understand that. It does make sense. It kind of changes my opinion with the outer buffs with that.
With when I played, unfortunately, when I was going up against Cooch, he didn't have a support, so I couldn't really experience what it was like on the gold side. But on the solo side, I think maybe the green buff is worth 2 to 4 minions, something like that, in terms of gold. I don't know about XP, but the real benefit you get is it heals you so much, and it is I don't know about the mid laner or jungler, but when in that 1v1, it is really big. I've gotten kills, but for the enemy solo laner trying to get that, and then I just, I guess he wasn't watching his minimap, but I just wait till it does some damage to him, and then I just pop out, clean it up, and then I was able to get him. But it's I don't know on the grand scale of things, like team wise, but at least in that 1v1, it works fairly well, I feel.
Yeah, when the buffs themselves, like the rewards you get for them is definitely worth it. Even on the AD side, because when I did get to play the next game, I had Sergeant Smokey as my support. Windu, you were on my team with that one as well. And we actually owned the gold buff, and you do get a great benefit of gold off of it. But when it comes down to, like what Deli was saying, is like now or what Windu said, sorry, you now get that T1 down. Now we're all going mid. I'm not running all the way across the map to go grab that gold buff. I'm just gonna stay there, or I'm gonna go grab a camp in, a white camp in jungle real quick. Or then just kind of then keep pushing mid, or we're gonna back, and now we're back because we're going Fangtooth, or now we're gonna back go get Orb Prime. After we took the tier 1 down from that lane, I didn't go over there like, hey, gold buff. It was, if I was over there, I'm like, oh shit, gold buff, stop, let go grab this real quick. And I told Smokey that. I'm like, all right, and we went and grabbed it. Other than that, you don't even you didn't touch it. It literally became you could almost just cut it off after let's say 12 minutes in the game. All right, these buffs just no longer exist because you don't need them.
Definitely the Prime buff and Raptor buff definitely just take over importance. Mid to late game. And dude, the Orb Prime buff, when the enemy team has it, it's impressive. It was
almost a guaranteed win, by the way.
The mini Prime buff is oppressive when that person has it.
So to tell Deli real quick, the mini Prime buff is basically a one-person Orb Prime that a jungler can go in and snatch. Like, they'll have the Prime buff, but only that one individual.
Yeah.
Okay. I have several problems with that. Just basing off that information here too, right? A lot of that issue is that you have this buff that you basically can use, and a lot of players, mostly in lower ranked tier players, once they get that buff, they get this idea in their head that I just beat the game, right? Like, when you have a mini Prime buff like that, it stifles the organic and robust gameplay systems that game designers are trying to create. And it's important to avoid trying to restrict your gameplay too much. Like, when you have a character that gets that buff, like, I'm sure there's a meta where, there's a certain character that benefits very heavily from the mini Prime buff, right? But if we're looking specifically in games in terms of game design and a lower tier, when a player, like, let's say I have 10 hours in the game, and you play the game and then you get this mini Prime buff, and it's just like super powerful. It does everything. You move faster, you attack faster, you do more damage, you get a shield. It's like, I just beat the game. Like, it becomes you
turn into Superman.
I'm not gonna call it an open world map. I'm gonna call it, Naughty Dog coined something called a wide linear map, and we're at Ubisoft, we call it a radically non-linear map design. And with that, it means that, like, you have the ability, it's like big enough where the players are rewarded by exploration, but it's still linear enough to understand your objectives, right? Okay, but in a game with very dynamic systems like this, if you give a player the mini Prime buff, another player, this is the theory of fun to not fun, right? Fun is like, hey, I have mini Prime buff, I have mini buff, I'm awesome, I do more damage, I'm Superman. And then the not fun behind it is that, like, it ends games quickly, or the enemy player may feel like, well, now we have to engage in a team. We have to engage in a team fight. It funnels the players into one section of the map. It funnels players into one set of a play style. It funnels players into a certain meta that when, let's say, Chimera gets the mini buff, like, we all have to trap Chimera here because he can't jump in this area right here. This would be the optimal way to play against it, right? You don't feel dynamic. The players against the mini buff might feel helpless, right?
Oh, so bro, Chimera was wrecking shit with that mini buff. I can tell you that now.
I haven't even played the game, and I was able to just guess that
100%.
The mini buff is able to be, is terrorizing lower elo players on a character that has a low skill floor and a low skill ceiling. And so when gameplay like that feels random or non-existent, because let's say you get the mini buff, you're like, okay, time to rush now mid. When it funnels players into that sort of thing, if players can't see the cause and effect of systems enough to understand why things happen, like why we lost mini, why we didn't jungle, like a jungle difference. Why, when players at a lower elo specifically do not understand the cause and effect of gameplay systems enough to understand why these things happened, why we lost this, why we lost that, it really starts to lose the players. And like I said, in a game with very dynamic systems like this and a very wide linear level, or a very radically non-linear level, the players will feel helpless. And so yeah, that is the biggest thing when you encounter a game, or when you encounter your brawler or MOBA or whatever, your match itself becomes too uniform, too sterile, too linear. You do the same things over and over and over and over again. I know that when I was playing Bronze Army, our game plan was, hey, 15 minutes we do Raptors, 20 minutes, 17 and a half minutes we rush or Prime. Like, it literally every single game, it was just like, this was our game plan. I'm sure for the few games that I was able to play with JPie, he was like, oh, hey, we're ganking mid. I come gank his mid lane, and he's like, all right, cool, thanks. I'm like, no, you come with me. Like, I already have a game plan. I already know that this is the uniform way to play this elo, this rank, this character, this style. There's no dynamic system there.
Yeah, now I will say really quick, just taking a step back and going as far as visually, foliage, as far as textures that we saw, as far as walls. I will give them credit where credit's due. You went by Prime Pit. There were actual puddles with really nice reflections going on. Active shadows. Like, it was honestly really, really immersive. The walls were tall enough with foliage and shadows to where you were in the jungle. You felt immersed. The verticality made it to the point, it was extreme verticality, I would say, in a MOBA specifically. It was to the point that you would go in the jungle and then be like, okay, the buff is up there. Like, it wasn't just like, hey, I can see everything in my peripherals. So I will say, as far as visually appealing, I think they've done an amazing job. I don't know if JPie and Cooch agree here.
Yeah, it looked really great.
Go ahead. Go ahead, JP.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it looked really, really good, and I'm sad I didn't get a good. Like, I should have just took the first game to just walk around for 10 minutes, just looking at it. Yeah, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't do that. But how about you, Kuch? How do you feel?
Visually, it is very pretty. The waterfalls they have waterfalls that are in the jungle. They have waterfalls that are out on the outer edge of the buffs. The outer lanes, the solo and dual lane waterfalls. Or at least there's one over there in dual lane.
There's also a waterfall in the orb Prime Pit.
Yeah, you have these beautiful, aesthetics that they're putting in the game. The foliage is nice looking. I'm pretty sure one of my games, I didn't go look at it, but I just took their trust for it, and I should have went and looked at it just because, obviously the videos were taken for the recordings. Is river actually moves, is what they're like. If you go look at mid lane, you could probably see, like, you're seeing like things like leaves float down the river, whatever way it's going, it usually goes north to south, but I don't know where the map sits. So, and that's, so it's great visuals there. My issue I have, and it's not an issue, I guess, I don't know, is I was hoping for something more not Paragon.
Interesting. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
you're something a little bit more different, like, or some pizzazz.
Show me Omeda's assets. Don't show me Paragon's assets. Show me, like, you're building, because I could be wrong, but I'm thinking there's gonna have to be a new map eventually. Are you gonna use this Paragon asset map for the rest of your time? Obviously, when time goes on, I'm hopeful the map's gonna change a little bit, but I was hoping for
there's usually updates
more. I was hoping for, like, to go in and be like, oh my gosh, look at red buff. Red buff is something completely new we've never seen before. I was hoping for something, or I don't know. We still got Harambe. Like, something different. I was hoping for. In mid lane, so comparing the two games, you got Fault and you got Predecessor, right? Fault shrines are the river buffs, right? Literally in mid lane, is one of those shrines is a statue by the river, so it's like, it's like the assets are being used still, and it's just like I was just hoping for something new, something to separate the two games, something to separate them from Paragon more, just kind of get that foot out there. That's what I was hoping for. But the game, again, give credit where credit's due. It is beautiful, like everything, like it. They did a great job with it. I mean, I can't just pull this up and make this. The white pearl, is shiny and it's great looking. Even the black,
I was gonna say the reason why I'm playing this here is you see this on the screen. I'm about to walk right over a puddle because there's a waterfall creating that puddle. As I walk by, there's actual water particles, I guess you could say, that come across my screen, like a different level of immersion. And as you walk through, everything that you see on here, from shadows, the actual camps, crazy verticality, and you're about to see me.
Verticality is amazing here.
You're about to see me here as soon as I finish this camp. Go into the Prime Pay because I noticed that my team is there. I do like the fact that for newer players, they have these arrows painted everywhere on the map with literally up arrows. They have a sergeant rank. Get it, Sergeant Smokey? They have the sergeant rank painted as a, you can leap over this. That's a nice little touch for new players, I will say. For inexperienced players. With
Drongo, that doesn't work.
Oh, maybe because it was Drongo, but I mean, you're gonna see me with Kalari right here.
Right. No, I had to send it to the team, and it's just a little map glitch or whatever. I jumped and then I was in the wall, and I couldn't get over.
The puddles and everything.
Oh, here we go. Now the map is.
Let me ask you guys, as gamers and as developer, should aesthetic be prioritized over design?
I'm gonna say over. No, I'm gonna say, like, I want a good 50-50. If that makes sense, or I guess, or is that too greedy? I don't know, but I want a good aesthetic, but I also want good design. Like, another thing I want to say about this map, I don't jungle very often anyways, because I just don't. I'll have to work with Deli. I have to pick him up and say, hey, teach me the ways, because the map rotations are crazy, right? I don't understand it. And now even with this map, as a laner, I'm trying to run away from somebody, and like I thought they were still chasing me, but I started running, and next thing I know, I'm back by my base, by my inhib, and Smokey's like, oh, are you backing? I'm like, no, I was like, trying to come out to the side by my tier 2. I'm like, well, shit. And I was even following what I thought was the mini map. And that's still the mini map. I was following, like, okay, here, and like I ended up being somewhere else. You can get lost in that jungle, until you actually start playing and get more time with it. But it's just like, this is crazy. And thinking to be a jungler, I'm like, whoa. Like, how am I gonna do rotations and understand my laning, through the jungle, how I do that?
Go ahead, Jay. I'm gonna.
Yeah, you're gonna be on the other end.
I would say I would give aesthetics 30 and the actual game 70. Realistically, you want to say 100, but
of course
you have to keep it in, because the game is the most important thing, and that the aesthetics are a bonus. The game's got to be solid, it's got to work properly and everything, and that's what I definitely think that's always going to be more important than aesthetics.
I agree.
Worth pointing out before Deli goes, a well-designed game is very different than a well-running game. It could be smooth, but still have its flaws, whether it be with numbers, whether it be with map design, etc. Worth pointing out. Go ahead, Ellie.
I would say that aesthetic has to serve game design. Something that's very important for Smite is that their style and their aesthetic serves the longevity of that game. That's something that photorealism, something that Call of Duty 4 has to be remastered within the decade, but Smite can just be ported to the Unreal Engine 4 or Unreal Engine 5 here, because their style and aesthetic serve the longevity of the game. When you have photorealism like this, you have to constantly be updating the game, which is a lot of the reason why MOBAs opt for simpler styles. Here, aesthetic is king, but there's no story involved currently. Gameplay remains king in games like MOBA, which is my biggest beef with this. It's not the photorealistic style, which, at the end of the day, down the road will become more expensive to update. But at the end of the day, aesthetic has to serve game design, right? If you move closer to the river, if you build high to low and you move closer to the river, you should see more greenery. So that way it should cue for the player that I'm getting closer to a source of water. Instead of having a river that flows one direction from north to south, they should flow from top to bottom, and they should come into a valley, which is what mid lane would be, which would give a subtle cue to a new player that the way the river flows is the way I shall travel. That way, a player like Cooch...
Give me a story right now.
Sorry, go ahead.
The way the river flows, the way I shall travel. Like, all right.
The way Cooch should be able to see that as a design aspect that is so subtle, but okay, maybe I should do that because realism and realistic are two different things, right? Realism is along the lines of, if I throw an ice cube, or if I throw a rock into, if I throw an ice cube into a fire, it should melt. But realistic is something along the lines of something behaves how I would expect it to behave, even though it's not going to be exact, right? So if I see a wall that I can jump over, realistically, I can jump over it. Realism, obviously I can't jump that high, or character can't jump that high, but we're not going for realism, we're going for realistic, because the reason why is because we want to serve the gameplay to be fun, right? So here, realistically, the water will flow. Realism, that's not how rivers work,
Right.
But we have to take a cue for realism. We have to take a cue in realistic and have it serve the actual design gameplay. A lot of my problem with the jungle here is it's designed in a node system, and a node system is a buff here, this here, this, that. Like it feels like a game of you got to collect all the buffs, got to go hit all these points, right? Point A to point B. A game that is very perfect, I'm not gonna say perfectly, but very well designed, almost too perfect to a T, is something like Pac-Man, where the entirety of the map is used, all the pellets are able to use, there's no exits, so you can constantly be moving and making tactile decisions, and it flows very, very well. Sharp corners, everything is easily followed, you understand where the ghosts are, you understand where the buffs are, you understand where you are, it's very brightly lit. It's there's a flow of traffic in a sense. When you're in a lane, you understand when pellets aren't there, that you can travel anywhere you want. But when the pellets are there, you ideally want to travel in the direction of the pellets. That is just subtle game design. That was, that game came out 40 years ago or something like that. That's still to this day.
Hoping more.
It still holds this day. That is, you can still study it. Like a lot of people, a lot of interns that I work with study. I tell them, please study this map design, just because it's just fantastic, right? It serves its purpose. But when you look at a game like this, where you have the jungle buffs that are hidden by walls, or things are, it's just, you have walls that you don't innately walk into, right? So if you look at a game like League, if you're in your own jungle traveling the correct way, you don't run into any walls on your buffs. But here, you run into walls as soon as you run into a camp, right? You hit that green buff, and then right below it, there's, you can drop down into it, but there's like a wall there. I didn't even, if you didn't know, if you didn't pay attention to the minimap, or new player, you would never know that there's a camp tucked away right there, because that camp is not innately shown to you. That is something that Paragon excelled at, because
that felt weird. By all means.
Paragon excelled at, because Epic Games is a very seasoned company where all of the camps are turned to the player. So you have openings that you're able to just walk into. I know this is a camp because it goes high to low, and there's a dirt travel path. There's a worn path here. So there's subtle cues and subtle designs. The closer you get to the river, the more green it gets, so you understand that you're getting closer to water. You can play the game with the audio off, essentially, or you can navigate the map with the audio off. You don't need any sort of,
you know what that camp feels like? Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Having that closest camp to mid, facing mid, it almost feels like, hey, enemy jungler, this is an easy steal for you.
Yeah, it
or an
while
easy
it promotes
counter.
where it promotes exploration, it funnels the jungler into something. If I'm jungling on my side, I probably a majority of the time I'm gonna skip that camp. Or because I'm in that camp and my back is turned, I'm susceptible to a gank. That's just bad game design because I don't have any freedom. If I go into that camp, I'm locked into that camp. It locks off the rest of the map. I have to completely put all of my attention into that camp. My back is turned, I don't have wards, I don't have a teammate near me, I'm in a pit, so there's no exit. All of these things that I covered prior in map and game design, it's like a checklist with Predecessor's map design. It's like, okay, there's no exit, this and that, this and that, this and that. And it's like they're so focused on making the game pretty or so focused on making a game familiar, like with the Paragon assets, like Cooch said, like the game is just so familiar. Like, of course you're gonna know how to play it. But if you want to be successful, if you want to be a competitor to Paragon and not a Paragon remake, you need to do things that Paragon failed at, and you need to excel in the opposite direction. And that's something that I see,
That's a good point.
which is not going well here, just visually from a standpoint as a game developer. A lot of this stuff is just reused assets, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. They put that out there for us to use. But
Right.
I don't feel like they learned anything from Paragon's downfall. And I feel like as a game developer and as a player, I feel like I would not want to spend time playing a game that failed or a clone of a game that failed. You know, a lot of people who played Paragon are going to be playing this game. So we're going to be judging it harshly, especially at the 1% level where I used to play. We're going to be judging it harshly like, okay, well, this is the exact same. Well, this is the exact same. This is the
It
exact
definitely
same
feels
way.
like it's targeted heavily at the Paragon audience. Overall,
But
when
it-
you're in there playing
That's
everything.
what they
Of
said in
course.
the very beginning, though, is that they literally do want to, in a sense, remake Paragon. You know, and I know like Fault said that they don't want to remake Paragon. Now they're trying to stay away from that, you know, and go something a little different route. And I'm okay with that. Because I really enjoyed Paragon. I was upset that it failed. So I
Yes.
get that, but I mean, like, so like, there's got to be things that you want to pick, you know, that, you know, even if it's something that failed, right? But like, you don't want to do all of the things that failed,
Yeah.
because obviously it failed for a reason. But like, if for some reason, let's just say for whatever reason, I don't care, red buff was something that failed for Paragon, but we really enjoyed red buff. We're gonna keep red buff, but we, you know, they also failed with Fangtooth. So let's change Fangtooth. Let's make some changes. You can keep a small group of that. Of failings and keep them the same if you want, but you also need to make the changes in other places that, you know, and like you said, excel in the other direction.
You have to learn.
I was gonna say, I just want to counter your argument there, because yes, you should grab from the things that were working, but if at any point you grab something that wasn't working just because somebody loved it, in my mind, that's, hey, we're gonna use this rotten plank of wood for our house because that was my mom's favorite plank of wood. You feel me? Like it just because something has.
It's still possible.
Well, I understand it's still possible, but
I'm talking about the plank
I
of wood,
understand
that's
it's still
the thing.
possible, but that doesn't mean it's the optimal thing to do. That doesn't mean it's the best choice for the future of the game to do.
I'm sure JPie has spent enough time around me to understand that I was one very, very critical of Paragon's failings, and I'm very critical of these Paragon remake companies, because at the end of the day, why would you want to remake a game that failed? And Paragon failed on a numerous amount of things. And I say this with the utmost amount of love in my heart, because not only when it failed, I was evicted from my home and I had to go find another game to play. I was no longer streaming to 200 people. I was no longer making any money. I could not afford to do game development full time anymore. I had to go do others. I had to re-enter the workforce. That's just something that, you know, really put a diverging wood into my life at the time, which is something, you know, at the time that I was playing it professionally, I was 19. So I was in the game. I was just starting, actually, recently, a year and a half after that, was picked up by Ubisoft. So I was able to turn it around. But in the meantime, like, mind you, in that hole, I had loved Paragon probably more than anybody else. If not as much as anybody else. So why I'm so critical of the game is because I want it to succeed. As a game developer, I do not wish any of these companies ill will. I don't wish them to fail. I don't. I really
course.
don't. Canceling a game is something that hurts my heart very, very much, and we've done it plenty of times in the past, especially on project. You know, it sucks to work on a game for 3 to 5 years, or do work on a game for an entire year just for it to be canceled 3 years later. So I understand that pain, but you also have to understand, as a game developer, you have to succeed in the opposite direction. You cannot funnel these. You know, you cannot funnel your choices into nostalgia. It just doesn't work. I think a lot of people look at Paragon with rose-tinted glasses and completely ignore the fact that it had poor retention numbers, it had poor customer support, it had absolutely abysmal tutorial, and it had absolutely horrific design, pacing, and dynamic tempo. It had the ability to cater to lower skilled players, which is fine. The bottom dollar is important as well too. But you have a thriving competitive scene that is just so dedicated to just putting up with the game just to have another moment with another match or whatever, and you do not cater to those people. And at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of these Paragon remake companies are remaking Paragon with rose-tinted glasses because they think that, like, oh, it was so much fun. But my critique, a lot of my critiques in the beginning is a lot of these Paragon remake companies. I'm sure that a lot has changed since I've been in their discords and I've spoken to their CEOs and developers and such. A lot of their developers or a lot of their designers aren't very high ranked in MOBAs, which is something that I was very critical of with JPI. I brought it up to his attention. You cannot have gold players designing for plats. It just doesn't work that way. There's a lot of reasons why it's fine to design well and be piss poor at the game, but you can't be piss poor at the game and several other games and come into design something out of a new platform. It's okay, if I was a commentator, or if JPI and I were commentators for a game like Smite, it's acceptable for us to be bronze or gold. But if we're game designers, we have to put that out, that we are designed from the aspect of a diamond or master player, even if the fact that we're bronze or gold. But a lot of these developers, like I said, I'm willing to admit if things have changed, because it has been a while since I've spoken to them. But if things have stayed the same, a lot of these guys are designers, animators, developers, whatever it may be, that are lower skilled. And while there's nothing wrong with that, you cannot have a game that's successful if the majority of your developer base are gold players. And we saw that in the original test when people like JPI were just absolutely stacking power, and it made no sense. Like, why would you do that? Why would you bring a mechanic like power back that failed originally, twice actually, in the original Monolith, and then of course the
Talking about as far as the
card
Fangtooth.
remake. Yeah, and you have a third time with Fangtooth. So you have the original Monolith update with the power stacking, like the meltdowns and the atomic, or the nukes or whatever, micro nukes. And then you have the V42 card update where you basically just stacked power with all the ADCs and just negated everything else. And then junglers, you just stacked vitality. And then of course with the Fangtooth update and the Orb Prime update, where it just gifted 36 power out of nowhere. You cannot bring that concept back. And that's the first thing that Predecessor did, was they made an item shop where players stacked power. And that's just the result of having a bunch of gold players as game developers. Gold players prior to being game developers. It's fine to be a game developer first and a gold player second, but you cannot be a gold player first and a game developer second.
So I'm curious off of that, because that's a pretty intense subject that I don't disagree with personally. But how to build on it? What do you guys suggest as far as the direction to go? JPI.
I mean,
and then if you differ, that's fine. Let me know too, by the way.
I think you just stay the course. Like you mentioned that item perforator, which seems like it's quite strong. I didn't get a chance to use it, but it does seem, balance. I don't think that they're. I mean, they do some, but I don't think that's their priority now. And I think for now you just continue polishing, continue.
That's another good point, actually, if you don't mind me, while you continue.
Yeah.
Is the fact that they're still early in development a good enough excuse to kind of push balance to the side and be like, we'll balance slowly as we go?
No,
Because
I don't.
I'm personally,
think so.
I'm personally one of those that it's like, hey, you implement it, balance it, make sure it's Gucci, so you don't got to come back to the same point later. At best, minor adjustments, how the items react with each other, etc.
I disagree with that statement because you have to understand that as a MOBA, there are like Heroes of New Earth, Dota, and League of Legends, and of course plenty of other MOBAs that were canceled or whatever. Gigantic being one of them. You literally have several dozen decades of experience to draw from, and yet you ignore it all. So,
What do you mean by ignore it all?
As a game developer, I can't feel pity for anybody who ignores, their competitors. The reason why Call of Duty is so wildly successful is because it draws from their competitors. It adapts consistently. Gears of War was one of the first multiplayer games to create an XP bar to reward the player. That is just, that's great game design. So you know what the first thing that Call of Duty does? Call of Duty 4 does? Adapts that. What else? SOCOM has what is it? You can hear people in a certain range on your mic.
Proximity chat.
Yeah, proximity chat. You know what Call of Duty 4 does? Call of Duty 4 makes that a perk. It allows to innovate and borrow from other competitors because they understand how it works, right? So if Predecessor knows that the power stat failed in the original Paragon 3 times, and then it knows how terrible the meta was in Season 2 or Season 3 of League of Legends with the power, or the banner minion in Season 8, then why wouldn't they learn from that? League of Legends has literally been alive for a decade. Dota 2 has been alive for a decade. Heroes of New Earth is 15 years old. Obviously, it's not playable anymore. Gigantic was alive for 3 years. Paladins, Overwatch, that borrowed mechanics from MOBA have been alive for at least 5 years. That's like 25 years of experience right there that you can draw from. And yet you ignore it.
I think it's hard for them to successfully draw inspiration from other MOBAs without being too different from Paragon. And I think that's one thing that, let's say, for example, specifically Predecessor, I think might actually be kind of resistant to adapt to change. Because like Cooch mentioned, they've been very open about the fact that they basically want to be what came after Paragon continuation. And I agree to the point that Paragon had its flaws. Paragon needed adaptation that they didn't do in the right ways. Like they tried changing too many drastic things, too many different ways, making it too unique. We brought up the conversation earlier at the fact that simplicity works. It's just turning simplicity into complexity that shines. Not necessarily let's just make the mini-map complex. Let's just add buffs, etc. Right? So I really think that they are probably very hesitant to implement even some of the changes that they might want because their target audience is Paragoners.
Then that is simply a flaw in their vision. That is simply a flaw in their design from the get-go. Like I said, I do not wish anybody ill will, but sometimes you have to take a step back and be realistic with game developers, because
absolutely,
we have a hard time taking criticism sometimes, and especially level designers and animators, because it's like, what are you talking about? This is perfect. But in the grand scheme of things, if your vision is not cohesive, which is why something like Steve Superville was so successful in his career, is that he had a unified vision. Something that Corey Barlog is very successful in with the new rendition of God of War, because his vision was uncompromising. He understood what he wanted from the game. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I love Paragon as much as you guys, if not more. Paragon was a fun game, but it was not a good one. At all. It was fun. I loved it. but it was not good because the majority of the 1% spent more time complaining about the actual game than they actually did enjoying the game. They played it because it was fun and they loved it and they wanted to see more from it and they wanted it to be the best possible vision that they thought it would be. You know, aside from the fact that Epic Games promised us plenty of things from cash prizes to careers to actual competitive, but that's aside the point. You have so many people who believe that quit college, quit their jobs, put their livelihood on the line. I know several guys that I met at PX 2017 who's they were having children. You know, they were starting families and yet or going to school, and yet they put it all on the line because Epic Games and our vision, like it was just too promising. It was just too fulfilling. Like we just wanted it so badly. But the game was not good. And that is very indicative because the game failed 3 times, in fact, in Legacy, Monolith, and V42. So
Can you explain to me fun and good? The differences between there, because you were saying the game's not good, but we're also saying the game's fun. So can you explain to me your differences between those two?
It's a very good question.
So the theory of fun and not fun, right? So fun, like a mechanic that is fun for one player may not be fun for another player, right? What's a character that just absolutely plagued you guys, right? Like Kalari is infuriating to play against, right? Because she can turn invisible, but yeah, you can drop wards and you can see her, or if you played Kalari yourself, you could turn invisible and you could see her because the Unreal Engine 4 is unable to create 2 planes of stealth, blah blah. That's actually an engine limitation and not a game design limitation.
Interesting. I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
Thank you.
So you know, let's say for example, Kalari is a very annoying character to play against, right? Because she can go invisible. Like you going invisible is fun. It's absolutely fun for you. You know, It's hilarious for you. I'm invisible. I get a get out of jail free card. I can jump twice. I can, gank people. I get extra damage outside of invisibility if I attack somebody within melee, double time, whatever it is. I get all these bonuses, all these buffs. But a player that's playing against Kalari is not fun. You know why? Because it requires me to buy wards. It requires me to waste economy to play specifically against a character with limited economy slots. I only get 2 wards. If I'm using them in lane, I look like an idiot. You never see anybody in League of Legends drop wards in lane. Like you just don't. Like in the middle of lane, like you do that all the time in Paragon. It's just not fun for a player that's opposing Kalari. But yet, as a person who's playing Kalari, it is fun because you get the ability to tax the player, to reduce their economy if they want to counter you, to play a specific way, to buy specific items, to play defensively, to wait for ganks, to funnel assets and resources into your own lane just because you selected a character. That is fun for you because obviously you're winning. You get an innate edge. Right? Even if you play poorly, you get an innate edge. Whether or not you play to that edge is whether or not you're the 1% or the 99%. But playing against Kalari, it's like, well, now I'm at a disadvantage. Now, instead of buying a pot and 2 mana potions, instead of buying 2 pots or 3 pots, I have to buy a ward and 1 pot. Now I'm at a disadvantage because if I get into one gank, I'm able to be ganked earlier. I can't rotate as effectively because I don't have enough mana. I only have 1 ward, so whether or not I use it to help my jungler or use it to help myself is, that's a decision as well too. When you're playing at the 1% level, there's so many decisions that come into play with just somebody selecting a character. But at the lower level, that's irrelevant. Who cares? Kalari is just infuriating. So if you look at the win rates or if you look at the audience retention, Kalari is infuriating and playing against at a lower level. But at a higher level, it's like we understand how to allocate our resources to Kalari. So that innate edge that you gain is very slim. The 1% can't maximize it as much as something like if I were playing the 1% versus somebody who's in the 99%, because the 99% doesn't understand the cause and effects that that changed the game dynamic in one person's favor or another person's favor.
I was going to say, I wouldn't even use Kalari as my best example of fun versus bad. I would use Prime Dunk as one of the best examples for that. Because Prime Dunk was fun as shit. Grabbing that racing across, them stealing it, you steal it back, trying to dunk it, defensively, offensively, was fun as shit. Anybody that tells me that original Legacy Prime mechanic was not fun is a liar.
It painted it.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, when you were holding it, you were pinged on the mini map. So
yeah,
right.
So
you had a target on your back. That was the panic that you had. Like I can't.
The anxiety.
I can't say stuff. On your
of course, bro. What the?
I can't f this up. I don't want to.
But
you know, like
you
felt like you can't f it up, and then
you wouldn't ask a sailor to come on to the show if you could swear.
But on the counter argument, it was
on the defensive team. You had to allocate resources to that. Like that's like, we just can't let that happen. Again, with game design, there's no exit. If you didn't allocate resources to that player that was pinged on the map, you're screwed. That's where the not fun comes in. That's that's the fine balance between fun
you're
and
adding.
Not fun.
It was a mechanic that added possibly another half hour of gameplay because you just brought back all your inhibitors, right? It was a mechanic that it's like, hey, you and your team just defeated this major boss, but you still don't have the objective. You now have to enter enemy territory, allow them a chance to grab it and kill you, allow them an opportunity. Like, you wasted so much time also just focusing on Prime that if your team would have just grouped mid and shoved, the match would have been over faster, quite frankly.
That's what I was saying. Like, it doesn't give you an exit strategy. It doesn't give you freedom. It doesn't give you the ability to play the rest of the map. It doesn't do any of that.
It was a bad mechanic that was fun.
A bad mechanic. It was fun. It was just bad design.
It was poor for the game.
Yeah, and that's just, like I said, that's the big difference between fun and not fun, or fun and bad. You can have fun with a character that's just low skill and just have a great time. But you have to understand, you're only having fun because you're playing them. But if you look on the opposite team, or let's say, you're playing against Prime, if you're the one dunking, it's hilarious, dude. You're the best. Oh man, I have the greatest team ever. It's so much fun. I'm glad this game is going on another 40 minutes.
Let me give you a current example. Let me give you a current example that is in Predecessor, Fangtooth. The problem with that stacking power with Fangtooth, or the stacking buffs, right, is the issue that, imagine you're the defending team. I'm the team attacking you. My team has 5 Fangtooth. You have none. If you and I as a carry both reach full build, exact same items, exact same character, now you know I will outbox you if we each land every hit, because of a stack mechanic like Fangtooth that I probably might have not even been there to grab. The jungler did that. Our Chimera did that the entire time. But now it presents this slowly but surely snowball mechanic that the team that has the buff is now mildly stronger. As soon as they grabbed it a second time, it's fun. By all means, it's when you're getting it.
Yes, exactly.
But as soon as you're on the receiving end of that, it's like, well, I guess we got a shit jungler because now the enemy team has 5 Fangtooth. We're never going to win.
That's the first place you assign blame, always.
Yeah,
always.
So,
but
I mean, I feel like you guys are like, we're trying to do this in a perfect world situation of make it fun for everybody. Like, I feel like I don't know. I'm a competitive person, right? So if I lose, it wasn't fun, right? I lost. I may have enjoyed the game, right? I may have enjoyed the game, but it wasn't fun. Like, we're talking about, like, all right, Kalari versus a non-Kalari. Like, all right, I'm not having fun because we're going against a Kalari. All right, if I lost, like, I just feel like that you can't, that balance. I don't know how to find that balance. I'm not a developer, so I wouldn't know how to do that. But I'm just saying, like, that seems almost impossible.
Like I said,
you're gonna have a winner and a loser. Like,
yeah, the difference is, did you win? Did you win or lose because of a difference that was caused by you or the other player, or did you win or lose because it was basically the first one that gets to the Raptor pit wins the game? You feel me?
I have something to add here, because it's the key detail here is, say, even if you're behind 5 Raptors, can you take a team fight and win the match? Because just to contrast Predecessor with Fault, I've had matches where my team was down 5 Raptors and we take a team fight and we win. Conversely, I was also in a match where we were up 5 Raptors, and they took the team fight and beat us.
But you understand the cause and effect behind that, correct? Like, you understand why you lost the team fight.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
Okay.
there's.
And that's perfectly acceptable. That's perfectly fine because you understand. You know,
Mhm.
I don't want to sound mean, but it's completely irrelevant why a bronze understands why you won or lost that team fight.
Not that you're bronze, but
But I'm just all I'm saying is that, like, when you fun versus not fun, you balance from the top down, right? Because at the end of the day, the competitive environment, the top 1%, that's like how we expect everybody to play the game, right? Like, Bungie did a really, really smart move, which a lot of people caught flack for. A lot of Bungie caught flack for, but they banned people who had crappy internet from playing in Crucible. And that was to keep it fun for everybody who had a stable internet connection. Whether or not you want to dig deeper and call it classes or this or that is irrelevant. It was a good business decision to keep the bottom dollar. A lot of people complained about the lag or the issues in Crucible, and instead of creating a system of lag that was able to, you know, that cost a lot of money, and JPI is a project manager, so I'm sure he understands allocating funds and assets to something that could last a long time, that could potentially fail. Or you could do the easy thing and just cut everybody off who had crappy internet, and that's exactly what Bungie did. And whether it's fun or not fun for you or the top players for you, the bottom player, is irrelevant because they're not catering to you, they're catering to the top player.
If only they did that for fighting games. And I just want to PSA: if you play fighting games on Wi-Fi, you're not a good person.
Yeah, you're not. That's not funny, bro. Go home,
dude. As a fighting game fanatic at heart, and I know I know who Sonic Fox is and all that, bro. That right there, when you see a disconnect in the middle of a fighting game, it's just like, like why, bro?
But Cooch, to answer your question, if it's not fun for you, you also have to assess the fact that, are you low skill, high skill? Was it because of a buff? Was it because of a mechanic that you couldn't control? Was it because of a role that you couldn't control? Was it because you were outplayed and not outclassed or out, a meta or whatever?
As a new player, if there's variables stacked against you as a new player, how are you supposed to have fun and do well at the game if there are certain mechanics that are against you?
But you also understand that
all the comments in chat say get good.
Because you have to understand that the MOBA community is a niche community. While it is a very popular esport, it has remained king for so long, much like CSGO, because the skill floor is so low, yet the skill ceiling is so high. And like I said, bringing back all those topics and buzzwords that I used prior in our conversation, a lot of this stuff goes back to just simple game design. MOBAs are very niche. We all know that. You can't just go into a MOBA like Call of Duty. I mean, you can, and you may have a lot of fun, just, A-ramming 5 people and just, me, you, JPI, Windu, and one other person, and Smokey coming in there, and we're just having a ball of a time, goofing off and playing low meta champions and playing mages in the jungle or whatever. That's fun. That's perfectly acceptable, right? But you also have to understand that we do that because we're already in the MOBA community. But something coming out from the outside from the MOBA community, if you just lost, much like the fighting game community, there's a lot of reasons why you lost. You just didn't lose because the game was bad or it wasn't fun or you just had whatever. You were outclassed, outskilled, outgunned, outplayed, whatever it may be,
Yeah, and to expand upon that with an example with Fault and Predecessor. So the only time in Fault where the Raptors, it became too much was when they got 9 or 10. And to be perfectly honest, my team, I was on the losing team at the time, but to be perfectly honest, my team that whole time didn't perform well, and we straight up deserved to lose because we had a lot of opportunities to turn things around, and with Predecessor's version, I think that they can fine tune it in such a way as well, where you're going to have your opportunities, you better make them count, or you're going to lose like you deserve to.
whether or not you redesign maps, you redesign kits, you redesign timings, you redesign tempos, whatever it is, there is a way to get rid of it or to enhance it in order to, one, profit your bottom dollar, and two, still make it fun / not fun, or fun and not bad, or fun and good at the same time. Obviously the balancing team, if there is one, needs to be allocated towards that. But at the end of the day, like I said, I don't want to be rude, but if you're bad, you're bad.
Right.
And a lot of and which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you lose because somebody's, a Chimera got mini buff, and every single Chimera gets mini buff gets 5 automatic free Fang 2s, that's genuinely just bad, bro. That's not even not fun. That's just bad.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No, I get the balancing side of it. I guess I don't know. That definitely explains. I understand the fun and not good side of it now. With what you're meaning with that. I guess I don't know. Like we had going to what we're talking Predecessor here. Mm-hmm. Me and Windu had a match where we were pretty much losing the game because of that Chimera that got the mini buff.
Yeah.
But we were doing our best to holding our lanes where we were at.
Mm-hmm.
But we also owned every other objective, and that's what I liked about it. That's one thing I can say about Predecessor is it literally gives you benefits for getting objectives. Like you might be losing everywhere else. You might be getting as a carry, I think I was like 2-9-3 when I finished the game. Yeah, you don't credit me for winning this game because I didn't do shit. But I guess I did help get all the 5 Fang 2s. The other team didn't have any Fang 2s. We did get the Orb Prime, and then we only missed the Mini Prime one time. Other than that, we got everything else. We owned all the gold buffs. We owned the objectives on the map, and that's what was able to give us the win. Other than that, it was a pretty ugly match. If you ask me from our team side of it, Carrie didn't do shit.
I will say there was a person on our team that specifically said, typically, if you're 3 Fang 2s ahead, you have a clear advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 5 whenever we decided to team fight. And of course, we had the raid boss that was hard as hell to kill. But once we 5v1'd against the other 4, it was nothing. So I guess the argument could be made that, prioritizing this and that. But I'll be honest, man, we were getting shit on so bad that match. There's no comeback mechanic in the world where we should have come out on top. That Chimera was like 25-2, almost full build. I'm sitting here with 2 items. He should have been able to destroy, 1v5 our entire team and end in 20 minutes.
This is that match.
Because, this is that match.
You were Holly.
But because he earned it, right? Of course. Now, the difference is he mainly earned all that progress, the gold, etc., because of that mini prime buff. He just kept on going for it. You know what I mean? If that wasn't in the game, would he have been as powerful?
Yeah.
I'm okay with major objectives if they give you a temporary buff, like Prime, for example.
Yes.
But any objective that infinitely stacks, I personally have an issue with, not only from a balance perspective, but as far as even prioritization in a map. If you have one objective that gives you a permanent buff and one objective that gives you a temporary buff, the only way to make that temporary buff worthwhile is if you buff the shit out of it, which is how it was. If you grab big or prime, you low-key win. And that's like saying if you grab Baron, you're automatically gonna win. And that's not how it should be as far as balance.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have something you want to add there, J5, by the way?
Not really, not too much. Just that I just I know I don't want to say too much because I know I'm gonna have my opinion change more and more as we play through the stress test weekend, because I think that with the stress test, I don't know how they're going to have their they're like queuing up matchmaking algorithm. I don't know if it's going to be skill based or just randomized, but it
I don't think there's any matchmaking, by the way.
There's no MMR. It's already been confirmed. No MMR.
I see. Yeah, because now in our 3-4 games that we all played as testers, it did seem overpowering, 100%. But I'm curious what it's like in more organized environments. Where maybe the players are closer in skill level, and to see how that plays out differently.
I mean, I would love to be able to jungle for you guys in shot call and kind of organize something, play a couple pub games and be able to kind of.
I don't think you're going to be able to queue with more than 2 people.
Oh, okay.
Well,
that's what I was saying.
That was taken away. That was in the frequently asked questions.
Yeah, it hasn't been confirmed.
Now it's no longer there.
Correct.
So that may change.
They said they're going to announce something closer to the stress test weekend, which
if
arguably is 2 days away.
If I was able to do that, we'd get a little bit more accurate ability to judge whether or not the game mechanics in play dynamically affect tempo, whatever it be, freedom, tactical decisions, strategic ability, map knowledge. Does it stress all of that, buffs and everything, or is it just straight broken? So ideally, I would like to play organized play with you guys, but maybe
I wish we could do custom matches just to kind of test it out.
I'm sure that'll come down the line.
Yeah.
I would love to play with you, Cooch and JPie. I would love to play with you again, and Windu for you the first time.
Right.
But before I make an exit, are there any questions that Cooch or JPie or you, Windu, have for me on game design aspect? And Cooch, I know you don't know me, but I am a former AAA developer at Ubisoft. And recently, at the beginning of the year, I was headhunted by a company to help on the training program for Space Force, sanctioned by the U.S. government. So that's my background.
Nice. Well,
I got my question.
Good luck working with the government. I did that for 6 years and I didn't like it, so I got out. But I was military. It was a little bit different than what you're doing.
Okay, yeah.
They treat anything non-military as a U.S. government. I'll talk trash all I want.
Full benefit.
They treat anything non-military. Oh my gosh, they're babies, but they're military. We get shit on. So
I apologize.
I'm glad
for
I'm glad you got something like that, dude. That's awesome.
Thank you.
You are here in this Discord though, obviously, because here we are talking.
Yes.
If I do have a question, I'll hit you up.
Yeah. Please hit me up. I will answer. It'll go straight to my phone, so I'll answer with the ability when I have free time. So.
You got any questions, JPie?
Yeah, I was just confused earlier because we were talking about how Predecessor's trying to reach the Paragon, all the Paragon players. I don't think that's the case. I don't know how we stumbled upon that bit, but I know that there. I watched an interview of RG Sace. Maybe it was he had it like a year ago to 2 years ago, something like that. And he stated, he stated that he wanted to create the game in a way where they could scale it for like on Fortnite levels, basically, like that when this was like much earlier in their development
life scaler, like evolving like Fortnite, like as their map design, or
like a live service game.
Yeah, I don't. To be honest, I don't know exactly how he meant the exact phrasing he used, but it was something along those lines. Like they wanted to construct it in the game, and I think it kind of has to deal with some of the more design-oriented details. Like if you look at Predecessor, it's really awesome in terms of like memory and the hardware you need. And so like that's one aspect of it, because it has the capability to be on extremely high-end PCs and also much lower end, old PCs as well. And I have like a few of his interviews in my head. But again, I don't think that they're like. Obviously, they're inspired by Paragon, but I don't think that they like it's their focus, or they're really trying to capture that old magic. I think we talked about it. We touched upon it in our pre-stress
test weekend video.
Yeah, like they RGCS also he emphasizes lore, and he wants like people to be interested in the history of the characters.
Different levels of the game.
So it's like so there's many. I think that he meant that in a few dimensions, and so I think that they're trying to like have the greatest appeal. And I don't see them as trying to win over the old Paragoners. I don't see that, because you could make an argument that they a lot of their decisions would anger a lot of them. Like a lot of people who lean more towards Legacy Paragon, they're gonna hate this game because it's a very fast paced game. You have to. It's like
it definitely has a monolith prior to V42 vibe.
Yeah, it's fast paced. You have to make split-second decisions, and you better aim very well, or you're going to be punished for it. And
but considering Paragon had 3 different stages, wouldn't that be just the safe thing to do? To aim for the one in the middle?
It was just the one that at the very end was one that really trashed at the end. You have a very select few of many people who prefer Legacy, but then you have the people who played Legacy and stayed with Monolith, and you have the people who came on with Monolith, me, and I stayed even through version 42. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's still there. Like when I look at the game, I see it. I see what they're doing here. It even feels like Paragon, like, because Paragon didn't, like, now that I've had experience with MOBAs, Paragon didn't really have that MOBA feel. Like, it literally felt more brawlerly, whatever that word is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that one. It had more of that feel to it. Especially because like we're talking about, like once you got, everything was focused down mid. Like it literally became like you get that T1, and then now all of a sudden you just team brawl.
You guys hit the nail on the head. Yeah, you guys hit the nail on the head, because I'll read you a quote verbatim from an interview from RG Sace. So he was asked, what is Predecessor going to do that Paragon didn't? And he says, one of the key differences is the vision we have for Predecessor. Paragon had a vision that varied over time. Initially, it was a much slower paced MOBA, which focused on strategy. Then it sort of did a 180 and went too far into being a shooter action game, which took away from the strategy. Our vision for Predecessor sits in between. And then he goes on, but that's the key detail. So it's definitely, as you guys said, for the people.
They're trying to appeal to everybody.
Yeah,
which is smart as a business, but I'm really worried.
When you're using assets that aren't yours, you are, whether or not you're licensing them out, when you're using assets that aren't yours and you haven't really put a lot of creativity into making it your own, of course you're going to be compared to, the previous one. And at the end of the day, when you use characters, when you use blueprints, when you use the same animations, the movement styles, when you use the same numbers, the units, the everything, when you use the same look of mid as V42, and you have the jungle of like Monolith or whatever mixed in, like, of course it's going to be Paragon. Like, Jay, at the end of the day, I think they understand where they're aiming.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that they're aiming for Paragon.
RGSA's said it very, very clearly. We don't want to lean towards Legacy, and we don't want to lean towards V42. We want to be right in the middle, right? We want to have whether or not he used vague language is irrelevant. The key thing here that we want to take away from RGSA's is that he wants to target Paragon. That's undeniable, right? He quoted Paragon specifically. I mean, if any competitor, right? If this, at the end of the day, if this is a Paragon competitor, if this is a League of Legends competitor, if this sees worldwide success and Tencent sees involvement into it, or, whatever, let's say Facebook or Microsoft buys this and funds this, if this sees worldwide critical acclaim, what's going to happen is that either they're going to make their own assets and create their own thing, or they're going to be seen as Paragon 2. And that's just because the style, the aesthetic, the map design, the gameplay choices, the blueprints, the animations, literally everything down to a T is Paragon in its core, soul, and everything else. Regardless if you want to change the names, the lore, or whatever, it's Paragon in its truest essence, which was that middle ground between Legacy, Monolith, and V42. So to boil it down for you, Jay, I do think that they are targeting Paragon. I do think that they understand what they're doing, and I do think that they're
I
targeting
think it's very
nostalgia.
purposeful. Yeah.
And of course, I don't hate it at all. Don't get me wrong. We all love Paragon. Like I said, I want to reiterate this. I love Paragon as much as you guys do.
There.
But
Thank you.
I want more. As a competitive player in the
Yes.
1%, I wanted more. And this right now, from what I'm seeing on screen, is not the more I wanted. And, you know, which is fine. I'm not their game developer, so not my vision. But as a person who played a game that recently died 3 years ago, this is pretty still fresh in my memory. It looks exactly like a game I used to play.
Well, I mean, I meant it as the audience. So if you target the Paragon audience, you're targeting a very small amount of people. And
But it's an easy target, and I think that's why they're doing it.
It's
Well,
an
no,
already
but it's-
pre-existing.
Think of it,
It's
think of
a
it a game that
pre-existing
doesn't
audience.
exist. You don't have an audience, right? If you're like, I'm just going to create a game that has nothing to do with anything, I'm just going to create it from the ground up. I have no audience. Now I have to try to get that audience. I got to market. I got to do something. I got to sell you on it somehow, some way.
As
But
soon
if I
as
take
you release a
Paragon, who already
YouTube
has the
video with
audience,
Paragon, you fill a void.
Yes, I understand
Well, you
that
have
Paragon
that, so then
came
take
first.
that and build from it.
Well, yeah, I know. I know. Like a lot of the ideas originated in Paragon. I understand that, but my point is this: as far as the audience, they didn't build this game thinking we're going to build this for all the people who love Paragon. They have a much broader ambition, you know, that because the if you just numbers the people who played Paragon, it's a small amount of people compared to I think what they want to reach.
I will say
King,
the
what
ambition
you're
is
saying is they're creating a
possible.
game that they don't want to fail. Like that's because that's what happened. Paragon failed, and that's why their
Mhm.
Paragon's, base or the viewers or the gamers of Paragon is small because it failed. If Paragon was still playing, then the player base would grow because obviously the game's still alive. You can grow it, but like the game's dead, so it's you can't grow it anymore. So yeah, I would hope that you'd have broader outlook for that, and you'd want to grow off of that.
Oh yeah,
But
If you don't have that
Like-
vision, then you're not going to grow.
But I think you stunt your own growth as a game developer or as the CEO or the creative director of this game if you use everything Paragon wise, and then you can say all you want, but let's backtrack here. If you fail to take all of the knowledge that their competitors have gained over the last decade, good and bad, then what are you really drawing from other than Paragon, Jay?
And here's where I'm going to elaborate on that. I understand that they might have said that they have all these ambitions, right? But as far as what I'm seeing from the original, what was it, April 2019, the first time that I played Predecessor, from what I've seen from then to now, I personally can't say that I see all these ambitions coming to fruition. You get me? I can't say personally that I can see these ambitions slowly being formulated and slowly being put to execution where it's like, I can see them being their own game eventually. All I see so far is they're remaking Paragon. There's like in the playtest that we tried, take the difference in map out. There is very, very little that was different from Paragon to Predecessor. Even when you consider those outside buffs, which I disagree with the location, it was a regen buff and a gold buff. Guess what game had that? Paragon.
Right.
You get what I'm
True.
saying? Fangtooth, Paragon, or Prime, Paragon. The assets, Paragon. The minions, Paragon.
I
the stat
mentioned it
values.
before. Yeah, I mentioned it before. Big, please don't use that goofy looking raptor. It could be so much cooler.
Yeah.
But also,
Bro,
That's what I'm saying.
I've said it about any remake. I would have taken that pink minion from back in the day that was Orb Prime. OGs will remember that, dude. The pink minion with the horns. Yes. I would have, I understand it wasn't the prettiest asset, but I would have taken that and it's a placeholder.
As a developer, please don't ever fucking take that.
Hey, Windu, cut that shit out, man.
Yeah, I can create something even
Oh,
as
man.
a placeholder right now. Shit, don't take that.
But, you know, something they did nicely was one of the most, in my opinion, the fundamental flaws of Paragon was its card system, because it seemed like it was just
Too
poorly
innovative.
executed. Yeah, but it seemed like they designed it with loot boxes in mind, and that's like one of the biggest things that held Paragon back, in my opinion. And you know, I think that this, like, that's a huge change from the previous one, and I think it was a necessary one if a game like this will ever see any amount of success.
Yeah, going for traditional
with the
mobile
card
is
system.
different.
The card system, though, that's also holding back is you only have 3 cards available. You don't have that many things to. Yeah, there's no diversity to your build. Like, it literally is like, okay, I build this. Like, you may change one card depending on who you're going against or whatever. But other than that, it's the exact same thing. There's no differences. Like, all these different items that we have, which I like about Predecessor, all these items you bringing in here, it's nice. And that's one thing. Like, as somebody who's smaller,
That's true.
and don't know much, right? I played like maybe let's say 6 hours of League of Legends, right? I'm not top down. I just don't like it. I don't like the feel of it, so I didn't play very much of it. I can see with the items they're bringing in and some of the things they're doing, there is League of Legends inspiration.
So let's do this.
So I can see that.
And I'm sorry to cut you off because Deli here has to go, but
I got you.
We know that these games are ever changing. To end on a note here, we know that the only thing that's constant is change, right? I think the biggest difference now is that now that we got a taste after so long, let's see how we feel after a weekend as opposed to a day, right?
Yes.
After that weekend, we are going to reconvene. We'll get back together, go over everything, and then from there, we'll assess again. And then, quite frankly, when the game actually gets released to the public, we'll see how we feel after a month. All I'm saying is that currently, I personally was expecting more, and I can't wait to see more. But, you're muted, Ellie.
I don't want to handhold these guys. At the end of the day, they're game developers, so I'm going to treat them like game developers. And as a fellow one, I want to treat them as a cohort. If the stress test for you guys goes poorly or goes in a way that you feel like it isn't apt, all I have to say is that it is 2021. It has been 3 years since the announcement of Paragon's end date. So it has been 3 years in development, and if you look at fellow cohorts, indie studios and anything alike, there are many studios that have produced AAA-like quality games within 3 years that are very wholly unique, and Gigantic being one of them, that while it did fail, it was wholly unique and it did come out within a short span time. So if I were to hold these guys with the same standard, and mind you, these guys have a advantage here because one, Unreal Engine 4 was free at the time. These multi-million-dollar assets are free, and all of this stuff was already done. So to be frank with you, all they're really doing here, I'm seeing, is putting in a bunch of Lego pieces and then putting a fresh coat of paint on it. I'm just gonna call it how it is. From what I'm seeing, this does not look like 3 years worth of work. This looks like 2 years of fundraising and 6 months of Lego pieces.
Interesting. So let's end on that note. I want to hear what everybody feels down below, because you just ended that with a fucking Thor hammer.
Bang. Yeah.
And I just want to see what people think. And then again, we're going to reconvene after this weekend. Let's get our thoughts together then. And
wait. I have one thing to say too.
What's up?
Support Kalari is legitimate.
Get out of here.
And I'm gonna shit all over.
I hope to hear
all over you guys.
I hope to hear nothing but good news from you guys. Like I said, I do as a fellow game developer and as a cohort, I don't wish any ill will. I want you guys to succeed, but I don't want you guys to succeed in the wrong ways. Preying on the previous audience members, especially since RGSA has specifically said that they wanted to do more. So because you guys wanted to do more, I expect more.
True. Tip of the fedora, like J-Pie would say. Much love, homies. Let's end it. And we'll see y'all in the next video.